is I found that the Hedgewarian mind, and we don't discuss this much, and it's not even in any of the RSS literature or in the academic literature of India. But Hedgewar's influences Indians of all religious backgrounds can say that I am one with the soil, that I am a son or a daughter of the soil, and therefore the culture of this land is also my culture. Him and Savarkar, although both nationalists, although both championing the cause of the Hindu Mahasabha to a degree, Hedgewar had a very different opinion to the solution that India needed. Yet both remained friends, both remained, and that ability to disagree with someone and still bring them closer to you is a very, very unique state of mind from, by someone like Keshav Hedgewar, because you have to understand the Hedgewarian mind, and you have to understand the early rise of the RSS. What are the DNA of the movement, right? So I would first message is I think with an open mind, open heart, look to study the early RSS and Keshav Hedgewar in particular. I think Keshav Hedgewar will surprise many, many people right the way across the spectrum of society in Kerala.
നമസ്കാരം, കൂടിക്കാഴ്ചയിലേക്ക് സ്വാഗതം. ഇന്ന് കൂടിക്കാഴ്ചയിൽ ഞങ്ങൾ പരിചയപ്പെടുത്തുന്നത് കേരളത്തിൽ അധികം ആർക്കും പരിചയമില്ലാത്ത ഒരു വിശിഷ്ട വ്യക്തിയാണ് ഡോക്ടർ സച്ചിൻ നന്ദ. ഡോക്ടർ സച്ചിൻ നന്ദ അദ്ദേഹം ഇന്ത്യൻ വംശജനാണെങ്കിലും ഇംഗ്ലണ്ടിൽ UK-യിൽ ജനിച്ചു വളർന്ന വ്യക്തിയാണ്. അദ്ദേഹം ഒരു ഗ്രന്ഥകാരനാണ്, സ്വതന്ത്ര ഗവേഷകനാണ്, അതേപോലെ തന്നെ ഇന്റർനാഷണൽ സെന്റർ ഫോർ സസ്റ്റൈനബിലിറ്റിയുടെ ഡയറക്ടറുമാണ് ഡോക്ടർ സച്ചിൻ നന്ദ. പക്ഷെ ഇന്ന് ഞാൻ അദ്ദേഹത്തെ പരിചയപ്പെടുത്തുന്നത് മറ്റൊരു കോണ്ടെക്സ്റ്റിലാണ്. അദ്ദേഹം ഡോക്ടർ ഹെഡ്ഗേവാറിനെ കുറിച്ച്, രാഷ്ട്രീയ സ്വയംസേവക സംഘത്തിന്റെ പ്രഥമ സർസംഘചാലകം സ്ഥാപകനുമായ ഡോക്ടർ ജിയെ കുറിച്ച് ഒരു ബുക്ക് എഴുതിയിട്ടുണ്ട്. പെൻഗ്വിൻ ബുക്സ് ആണ് ആ ബുക്ക് പ്രസിദ്ധീകരിച്ചിട്ടുള്ളത്. ആ ബുക്ക് അന്താരാഷ്ട്ര തലത്തിൽ വലിയ ചർച്ചാ വിഷയമായിട്ടുണ്ട്. കാരണം ഒരുപക്ഷെ ഡോക്ടർ ഹെഡ്ഗേവാറിനെ കുറിച്ച് ഒരു സ്വതന്ത്ര വീക്ഷണത്തോടുകൂടി എഴുതപ്പെടുന്ന അദ്ദേഹത്തിന്റെ ജീവചരിത്രമാണ് ഡോക്ടർ സച്ചിൻ നന്ദ എഴുതിയിട്ടുള്ള ഡോക്ടർ ഹെഡ്ഗേവാർ എ ഡെഫിനിറ്റീവ് ബയോഗ്രഫി എന്ന ബുക്ക്. ആ ബുക്കിനെ കുറിച്ച് അദ്ദേഹം സംസാരിക്കുന്നു. ഡോക്ടർ സച്ചിൻ നന്ദ നമ്മളോട് സംസാരിക്കുന്നത് അദ്ദേഹത്തിന്റെ ജീവിതത്തെക്കുറിച്ചാണ്, ഈ ഗ്രന്ഥത്തെക്കുറിച്ചാണ്, വീക്ഷണങ്ങളെക്കുറിച്ചാണ്, മാറുന്ന ഭാരതത്തെക്കുറിച്ചാണ്. Dr. Sachin Nanda, thank you so much for joining us today. Namaste.
Namaste. It's a real pleasure to join you today.
Thank you. So I'm sorry that I gave an elaborate introduction about you in Malayalam. So I was just trying to tell them about your work, about your background and other things. So, but still I wonder, how did all this happen? Because as I understand, you were not in touch with the Bharatiya Samskriti or our culture or our lifestyle in your younger days. So, but now all your life, your mission is all about, studying, discussing about Indian culture, Indianness and other things. So how did all this happen?
Yes. Firstly, delighted to join you. Thank you very much. It's a good question. How did all this begin? So I was raised in the UK, and really the first few decades were just as any child growing up in the West. India is quite a far removed place. I mean, this is a time where there was no video calls, there were no WhatsApp calls, and flights to India were very expensive in those days. Right, this is the 1980s, 1990s, and India was a very different place. It wasn't as developed as it is today, And so the first time I properly came to India, I was 22, and I was backpacking across India for 3 months, and that was really my first touch point with my culture in a very real sense. So I tried to come and find some of my family roots, which are kind of scattered between Rajasthan, Gujarat. My mother's side is also in Maharashtra. I visited Delhi as well, and I went up to the Gangotri, Yamunotri, Kedarnath, Badrinath. I did all those pilgrimage routes as well, just backpacking on my own. And that was my first connection. And really, that is when I saw firsthand the challenges that the country faces, but also the opportunities. The way in which, I always say this.
Mm.
India is a miraculous place, right? 1.4 billion people manage one way or another to live together with all this diversity. They have a collective democracy.
True.
They are now rapidly economically growing and becoming an influential player in the world. And it's and so what I saw in this trip, which intrigued me, was the culture and the temperament and the lifestyle and some of the values of the Indian people that really caught my imagination. And of course, because of my heritage, I was even more interested because I wanted to understand my heritage, where I come from. And
Excellent.
so this is where the interest started.
So your first trip to Bharat itself transformed you. Your look, I mean, your thinking. It transformed your thinking, isn't it?
Correct. And you can read all the books you like about modern India, its culture, its society. But I always say this to all my colleagues here in Europe: until and
Mm.
unless you visit India, and you visit India with a non-European lens, and really try and see India from inside, uh,
True.
it- you know, you can never fully understand it. You can never fully grasp it. And I think that's, to be fair, that's one of the challenges that European commentators face in trying to understand
Exactly.
India, that you can't do it from a removed. You have to be there. So,
Exactly. But I just wonder, I was wondering, I mean, most of the travelers, especially from abroad who come to India, they have some focus areas. If you write about politics, they will write about Mahatma Gandhi, they may write about the freedom struggle, or they may write about Jawaharlal Nehru. If they write about spirituality, they go to Kashi, Varanasi, or about the glorious temples of South India. These are the focus areas many foreigners concentrate upon. So but in your case, it was totally different. You ended up focusing on Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. You ended up focusing and writing on Dr. Hedgewar. For many people, I don't think even in India he was not well known some years back. I mean, maybe 2 decades back, he was not even discussed, despite the tremendous contribution that he has done to this nation. So how did you end up there?
yeah, this is a great question. And I spent 7 years researching and writing this biography on Keshav Hedgewar. To me, it's an enigma. How is it that a man that I would argue is probably one of the most, if not the most influential modern Indian thinker, modern Indian reformer, who is hardly known by even Indians themselves, never mind the West? So what happened was that as I began to travel India more frequently, I began to make friends, and I began to obviously connect with people. And wherever I went, whether it was in a you know business chamber of commerce, or whether I was visiting a tribal village, or whether I was in an urban setting like a Mumbai or a Delhi, right the way through to second, third tier cities, what I saw in India was across Indian society, there was something called the RSS. It had interwoven itself into the fabric of Indian life, right? And when I would ask people about this RSS, everybody had a strong opinion. Everybody, right? So those who
Excellent.
love the RSS, they really are, strong about it. But those that don't like the RSS are equally, really potent in their views and polarized.
No
What
one
was
was
interesting.
passing.
Yes, exactly. The RSS, everybody had an opinion. But when I would ask them about the early history of the RSS, if I asked them about the, excuse me, the founder of the RSS, I discovered that most people on all sides didn't know much about Keshav Hedgewar. Even RSS Swayamsevaks, I discovered, knew very little about Keshav Hedgewar. Now there's a
Exactly.
reason for that, but I felt that in order to understand modern India, you have to understand the RSS. You can't avoid the RSS. And in order to understand the RSS, I think you have to understand the mind and the philosophy of the founder. And so this book really tries to map out not just what Keshav Hedgewar did in his life, but why he did it. So the mind and the psychology behind the man of the RSS.
But do you think that it was deliberate on his part that Dr. Hedgewar didn't project himself much? After all, he was one person who founded the world's largest voluntary organization. And that organization today has tremendous impact, as you said, on every walks of Indian life. So even internationally, it is recognized. But he did all this silently. Was it deliberate on his part?
Yes, I mean, again, Rajesh, great question. And I would say categorically, yes. Keshav Hedgewar built a movement that is now not just pan-Indian, it is now international, right? It has influence in over 50 countries around the world. And I think he consciously wanted to build an organization that was not a personality cult. He did not want to put any personality in the front and center of the organization. Now, this makes him unique because if you look at the early Congress, if you look at any Indian movement, religious or political, it's very personality centric. There's always a strong man, a strong leader at the front, and then everybody gravitates towards that leader. And Hedgewar really sees that as a weakness of the Indian society. And he wanted to build an organization, a movement, an institution actually, that was not personality orientated. And so he himself consciously led from the back, right? And today in modern management speak, we say leadership from the back, right, is the most effective. But I think Hedgewar saw that 100 years ago, and he not only saw it, he managed to implement it. And his philosophy still to this day drives much of the RSS and how it behaves, right? In terms of, you'll notice that the RSS doesn't really project itself or its people as leaders, inverted commas, even though behind the scenes, the RSS is everywhere, whether it's education or industry or labor unions or politics or social work. They are everywhere, but you just don't see them. And I think that is the spirit of Hedgewar. But, and that's fine for Hedgewar and that's fine for Hedgewarianism. But for you and I, people who are trying to understand modern India, trying to grapple with modern India, it is important for us to understand Hedgewar and his philosophy and his mind.
I totally understand. And you went even to the extent of calling him father of the nation, which was nothing less than blasphemy for many people. How? What was the response?
The reason why, I mean, the book, for those of you who read the book, and I hope all of your listeners will read the book is in English. And throughout the book, look, I try and bring Keshav Hedgewar alive, right? I don't want him to be some abstraction. I want him to be alive. So I try to research his life in that spirit. So in that spirit, one of the things that I say is that, you know, and I make the conjecture that, you know, up until independence, if you want to understand that freedom struggle, maybe it's okay to view it through the lens of Mahatma Gandhi, right? And his ideas, fine. But if you want to understand modern India, then Gandhi's paradigm doesn't work. Because frankly, when I travel India and as I study Indian society and Indian institutions, I don't see Gandhian thought, Gandhian philosophy, Gandhian ideas at the forefront of modern Indian society. What I do see is Hedgewarian ideas. What I do see is Hedgewarian thought at the forefront of modern Indian society. Now, some people will like it, some people will not like it. That's a different issue. My point is that I think Hedgewar's ideas are now more prominent than anyone else's of the pre-independence movement. So that includes, I would argue, not just Gandhi, but Savarkar, Bose, you know, Nehru, you know, these were obviously giants of their age, but Hedgewar was this unforgotten or unknown genius whose ideas are now actually the most potent, the most important ideas to understand and study. And that's why I kind of, with a little bit of tongue-in-cheek, say actually maybe he is now the father of the nation because his ideas are shaping modern India.
True, important and most relevant also.
Correct. Yes.
Sachinji, I'm pretty sure that you must have you yourself said you have spent a lot of years, a couple of years on researching on this book. There should be some few things that actually surprised you. You never expected, and few things that you came across regarding Dr. Hedgewar's life, his mission, and what all he has done. Were there surprising moments?
Yes. So I would say, Rajesh, couple of things I will share with you. One is I found that the Hedgewarian mind, and we don't discuss this much, and it's not even in any of the RSS literature or in the academic literature of India. But Hedgewar's influences were what I call a hybrid or a syncretic mind. What I mean by that is Hedgewar was obviously born in India in a Brahmin family, and therefore he was automatically absorbing and sponging the Vedas, the Upanishads, some of the Dharma Shastras. This would have been part parcel of his family, right? Doing pujas and rituals and all of that. That he was absorbing that. But he was also equally connected, especially during his teenage years. He absorbed a lot of Western European philosophy, right? So Hedgewar was reading, Mazzini, Nietzsche, the Greek philosophers. He was reading a lot around English Enlightenment thought. Which surprised me the most was that he is a blend of indigenous Indian thought and contemporary Enlightenment Western philosophy. So actually, Hedgewar was very open-minded, and he was absorbing the best ideas from around the world, right? And then he was indigenizing them. So through the RSS, he indigenizes it. He makes it Indian, but the influences are from all over the world, and you can really see that. That was a real big surprise for me. Number two was actually, I found Hedgewar to be the Hedgewarian mind to therefore be incredibly powerful and potent when it came to the problem solving of Indian society. What surprised me was the clarity with which Hedgewar could see the future. So he realized something very early, and I think this differentiates him, Rajesh, from all of his contemporaries, including Gandhi, Nehru, Savarkar, Bose, Ambedkar. And it's this thing about cultural nationalism. So if you will let me, I'll just explain what I mean. Hedgewar, I believe, is the first person in of his contemporaries that basically sees that the problem with India and Indian society are not the Britishers, is not anybody else from the outside. The decay of Indian society is from within. And basically, he diagnoses the problem with Indian society as three things: caste, class, and creed. By creed, religion. So these three things had basically fossilized Indian society, meaning that the common Indian could no longer get on in life. He could no longer progress in life unless he was born in the right class, caste, or creed, right?
True.
And so effectively, he sees that until and unless Indians, based on merit, based on opportunity, could actually have social mobility, India would not become an innovative society. And India, without becoming innovative, could never be flourishing, could never be wealthy, could never be powerful. And so he recognizes something that nobody else does. And he says, if the problem is with the people, the society, then the solution has to come from the people, from the society. So bottom up. And that's called cultural nationalism. Whereas everybody else, Rajesh, they were thinking that the problem with India are the Westerners. The problem with India is colonialism. Problem with India are the Islamic invasions. Whatever narrative. So what they wanted to do, they wanted to capture the state, push the British out, capture the state, then through the state, control and change the society as they saw fit. So that's called political nationalism. So everybody, Gandhi, Ambedkar, Savarkar, everybody, these are political nationalists. Hedgewar was a political nationalist. He transitions and becomes a cultural nationalist. That makes him unique. So these two
That's
things
a-
really surprised me.
There is huge difference. But the critics of Sangha ideology, the critics of those who criticize Dr. Hedgewar, they say that this cultural nationalism is not inclusive. So it tends to exclude sections of people. You know what I mean. So
Yes,
how do
yes.
you explain that? How do
In
you?
the book, yeah, great question. Great question. In the book, I spend a lot of time trying to show the reader how the Hedgewarian mind saw the world. So, couple of things. Hedgewar was absolutely clear. Now I'm just talking about the Hedgewarian mind. I'm not talking about modern Indian politics. Just the Hedgewarian mind. He was absolutely clear that caste, class, and creed must be gone. In fact, the words he uses are lock, stock, and barrel. They need to be removed from Indian society. So he's very clear on that. So for him, the divisions of Indian society should never be based on these three things. So, but at the same time, Hedgewar was very clear that the red line, or his red line, was something called Deshbhakti. Now, Deshbhakti is a very, very unique phrase. Sadly, Indian commentators on the whole have misconstrued Deshbhakti. They will call it patriotism. I argue in the book that Deshbhakti is not patriotism. Deshbhakti is a very, very unique state of mind where the individual, literally, the individual feels at one with the soil, and therefore anything that the soil produces is automatically his or hers, right? So it's a psychological state of being, to be a Deshbhakt. To be a patriot is essentially where you admire the state, you want to protect and fight for the state, so then the state can do whatever it wants with the society. That's a patriot. Hedgewar goes from being a patriot, and he is a patriot, but he develops this idea of Deshbhakti. The modern RSS may be patriotic, may not be patriotic. That's different. But the modern RSS is built thoroughly on Deshbhakti. So this idea of union with the soil, right? Whatever comes from the soil is worth protecting, is worth guarding, is worth practicing, including the culture. Therefore, every Indian language is a Rashtriya language, right? You'll notice the RSS still uses this language, that every Indian language is a Rashtriya language. What they mean by that is these languages have come from the soil, from the people of the soil. So therefore, they are all indigenous. They're all equally indigenous. There's no hierarchy in the Hedgewarian mind. But now suppose, Rajesh, that if that's his red line, and my red line is that any form of Deshbhakti, any form of reverence for the soil, is equivalent to idolatry. It's not compatible with my religion. Now you have two clashes. You have two world views that cannot match. So I always say this, and I argue this in the book. The Hedgewarian mind does not say RSS is for Hindus. Not once. The RSS is meant to be for all Indians, of all persuasions, of all ideas. In fact, I argue that the early RSS had communists, atheists, very orthodox Brahmins. It had people from the Sudra community. It had people from all walks of life, all walks of class. And it also had people from all different religions within the RSS. So the red line is not religion. The red line is not caste, and it's not class. The red line is Deshbhakti. Now, that is the challenge that modern India even today faces. That until and unless Indians of all religious backgrounds can say that I am one with the soil, that I am a son or a daughter of the soil, and therefore the culture of this land is also my culture. Even though I may have religious beliefs that are unique or different, that's okay. But you have to find that psychological oneness with the soil and the culture of the soil.
You mean to
Get a clash.
You mean to say that Dr. Hedgewar, as a thinker, he had all the solutions for the nation's crisis or the nation's issues in the past, present, and even in future? that the nation may face in future?
I think, Rajesh, that Keshav Hedgewar was a seer that could see long into the future. And he could see that India's solution was in the individual. When the average Indian became more capable, the society would become more capable, more organized. And only then can you build a functioning society. So he was obsessed with building the individual, make the average Indian better, whatever that meant. He had a definition for that. But make the average Indian better, then the society goes up. If the society gets stronger, then naturally India will have a stronger government, stronger institutions, stronger businesses.
That is very clear. Dr. Sachin, how did you find the man behind this mission? I mean, Dr. Hedgewar as a person, because he had an association with radical elements. He had association with Congress. Then he founded RSS. I mean, how was that person as a person? How was Dr. Hedgewar? What did you find in your research?
It's a wonderful question. Nobody's asked me that so far. Let me tell you, I think in the book,